I'm Eric Wolf, and my experience in business peer groups has changed my life, especially my membership in Vistage, one of the world's largest CEO advisory groups. I'm an entrepreneur, a business owner, and a Vistage speaker on the power of marketing. This podcast is dedicated to the people who make those experiences possible, the peer group chairs. Every episode, I interview a Vistage chair who has dedicated their time to helping entrepreneurs like me succeed. My guest today is Steve Sager. Steve is one of our chairs here in Denver, and I just love my Denver chairs. You guys are amazing. So, Steve, welcome to the podcast. Thank you.
Thanks. Good to be here.
Well, you are a welcome addition to the Chairwaves family, and so to start with, I thought that we would dive into where it all began, because you came from a family of entrepreneurs.
Yes, I did.
Tell me about that and how that informed your journey.
Sure. Yeah. From a very young age, my father was an entrepreneur, ran multiple businesses, and I still have distinct memories. I used to get up early in the morning with him every morning when I was 4 or 5 years old, and I'd watch him get ready for work and put on his tie and lace up, and I just kind of stuck with me, just the repetition and the work ethic. And so
what kind of business was he in?
They were manufacturing in the time Formica countertops, and they were manufacturing more linear feet of Formica countertops than anyone in the country, and it was in the Chicago area.
Okay.
Yeah.
So from Chicago, and what was your relationship with the business other than watching your dad go to work? What did you get to interact with
in his company?
Yeah.
I was just talking about that yesterday, because we do have members in my group that are family-owned businesses, and they talk about the experience of bringing one of their kids into the business and how do you onboard that correctly. And then it reminded me, I asked one summer my dad if I could work in the shop making countertops. And he said, come on in, we'll give you a summer job. And when I showed up day one, they handed me a broom, and I worked for 3 days straight cleaning the shop.
Yep.
So that was kind of my initiation into his business. And then after that, they said, okay, now that you're done, go unload these trucks. So really starting out at the ground level.
Did you ever get to make the countertops?
Yeah. In the end, I was cutting countertops and filing them and doing the miters, and then I got to go out to the actual sites where they were being delivered and do the installs in the kitchens and in apartment buildings and in homes.
How long did you work in your dad's business?
Oh gosh, it was only for summers, and I think I did it for 3 summers.
Very cool. Very cool. I mean, that must have given you a heck of an education in terms of not just the work ethic piece and the part where you're going in and working, but the part where you're actually seeing the ups and downs of the business as you're growing up.
Yeah, I tell you, it was a eye opener, and a couple of other things I remember vividly were in the 80s. It was in the 80s where my father adopted computing technology. He was one of the first I knew of that was using an Apple computer, and I had to go in and create data enter and create customer lists. And I was horrible at that. I knew I was going to make a lot of mistakes if I had to do that for a living.
And so you decided early on that data entry was not a career path for you.
No, data entry and computer programming was not my thing.
So can I ask what happened to the business?
Oh, yeah. For his business, they ended up selling it.
Okay.
I think it... from a timing perspective, it was good. This was a time in the 70s that unions were going on strike. It was creating a lot of havoc in the business. and there was also a lot of stress that he was in business with his brother. There was a lot of stress on both of them. They said, "Hey, we we need to get out from under this," and they did. Ironically, they sold it, and the company that bought it from them ran it into the ground, and they ended up buying it back for pennies on the dollar. They grew it back up and sold it again. So they got two bites out of the same apple.
That's terrific. What did so he goes on this whole roller coaster ride, and then he sells the company the second time. What does he do after that?
Well, after that, he said, pack up the trucks. Or pack up the family. We're moving to Colorado." He had, excuse me, at that time wanted to get out of the Chicagoland area, which is where we all grew up. He had an idea to make raised panel doors in a factory in Trinidad, Colorado. And the idea was, hey, there's lots of box makers out there of cabinets, but what if we supplied them the doors, and you could easily put them on UPS trucks and ship your product? And so they started doing the doors, and then they got into the hinges and the hardware and the handles and all that kind of stuff. And they developed quite a business that now they had a reach across the country of customers versus just doing it in a specific geographic area.
And Trinidad, not for those of you that are listening that are not from Colorado, Trinidad is this, sort of not little town, but little-ish town, kind of at the very bottom of the state, right on the border between Colorado and New Mexico. And what made, out of all the places that you could have done this, why Trinidad, Colorado?
He had a friend that agreed, a brilliant guy, engineering, and was able to build equipment. And he just happened to live in Trinidad, and that's where the factory was that made the doors. So he said, "Hey, if we're going to go do this, you got to come out to Colorado." And you're right. It's just a tiny town south of Pueblo, right on the border.
Yeah, kind of right in between Denver and Santa Fe.
Yeah, right before Raton Pass.
Yep. Super interesting. So he got the entrepreneurial bug again and just kept on it.
Yep, and did that. He did that for about I would say 20 or so years, and then ended up selling that, and then became a manufacturer's rep. And still today, he worked until he was 72 years old, and still today in Colorado, people in the industry I'll run into, and they say, "Yeah, I knew your dad. He was Mr. Cabinet in Colorado," and so he had quite the reputation. I was very proud of, to leave a legacy like that. He passed away 3 years ago.
What a neat story!
Yeah,
I'm so glad that you shared it. What were there things that you liked in particular about growing up in the Chicago area?
I love the sports. You could see the Bears. I was a Cubs fan, even though I was a South Sider. I love the Cubs. The Bulls, the Blackhawks. It was just a great sports town. And I had grandparents that lived up on Lake Michigan, and so we got to see the beauty of the lake.
Very nice. I'm a longtime believer, and while I am a fan of sandwiches everywhere, but it's my opinion, and I think it's controversial, that the Italian beef outranks the Philly cheesesteak in the pantheon of sandwiches.
It does. And some of these places are coming to Colorado. What is it? Portillo's?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, that's the best beef and, sausage I think you can get.
Very cool. So how did your entrepreneurial journey begin? We've talked a lot about your family and that story. And so now you're, as an adult, what was your journey that made you a business owner?
Yeah, it's a great question. I come from a family, four siblings, and my brother and I, my older brother, we took the entrepreneurial track, and my younger brother and my younger sister did not. Probably all for good reason. In fact, before I went into business, my dad sat me down and said, "Are you sure you want to do this?"
Was there any slapping involved? Any wake up?
Yeah. Are you crazy? Yeah. Um, he was. He. I knew that he loved that I had the entrepreneurial DNA, because I didn't fall far from the tree. I am my father's son. He also saw that he went through a lot of stress. He had one of the other reasons he moved to Colorado is he had had a nervous breakdown after selling the business. So while you
Oh
see all
boy.
these wonderful stories of high five and selling the business and all kinds of achievement, it's oftentimes done with sacrifice and at some sort of expense. And I think that as his son, he just worried for me in that regard.
I think that being a business owner is something that is both enriching and expensive for families. I think that there is an education and a certain amount of freedom that ends up being good for your family. But I think that there's a cost to being a business owner that definitely takes a toll on a family.
Yes, absolutely. Health wise, mentally, your overall well being, your relationships, you're striving for achievement like a lot of entrepreneurs, and then you neglect probably the things that are the most important.
And so you said, "I want to be an entrepreneur. Sign me up. Let's do this thing." What? Tell me about it.
Yeah, so out of college, I had a finance degree from the great school of Arizona State University. And I went to work immediately out of college in sales, and I was working for big tech companies, NCR, Digital Equipment Corporation. These were billion-dollar
Yep.
companies back in the day. I got phenomenal training in selling. These were the days, Eric, that a company would invest, a couple $100,000 in you to go get you trained properly over a 6-month period. And grateful for being able to have that experience. Then what happened?
That's a thing that's super rare now. By the way, that people will come in and get that kind of investment put in them as a new or entry level or low level person. There's a lot of just feet to the fire. You're gonna sink or swim.
Yeah, that is very prevalent today. Yeah. So, so then what happened? Like I suppose in a lot of relationships, I was working at a billion-dollar company, Digital Equipment. My mentor, who also happened to be my manager over sales, um, said, "Hey, I'm leaving the billion-dollar company. I'm going to work for a $10 million systems integrator here in the Denver area." And my phone rang one day and said, "I'd like you to come over. We've just acquired a software company. We need someone to help us go sell the new acquisition, or at least the products and services from the new acquisition." And I went from being in this giant company to a $10 million enterprise.
And how old were you at this point?
I think at that point it was in 93. So I was probably 36, 35 years old.
So fair amount of experience and obviously ready for a new challenge.
Yeah, I was ready. And, you're loyal to people. I realized that, early. The loyalty is really to people. The business ideas come and go. The people stay the same. And then I have another story around that served me well over 19 years of being the CEO, founder and CEO of my last company.
And so now I would love to hear how you ended up becoming a Vistage chair after being an entrepreneur for growing and ultimately selling a company.
Yeah, so just to fill in a little bit of gap before Vistage, um, this little $10 million company that I went to work for sold to a publicly traded company. I stayed on for about 2, 3 years after that, went up the ranks in sales management, and then left, sat out on the sideline, or at least outside of the industry, for 3 years. And then I got the band back together. I got the very best salespeople in our industry, and we went and spun up another company in the industry after about being out for 3 years. And and we had to take a little bit of a spin on what we were going to go do. But that
Right.
then once we spun it up, I got all the right players. I got the seed capital. That's the one I ran for 19 years and then sold it about 5 years ago.
Wow. And so you sold for about 5 years. Did you stay on after the acquisition?
Yeah, I had a 3-year employment agreement. I stayed on for about a year after our companies were fully integrated. Had the discussion and sat down with my new boss, the CEO, and we agreed it was a good time to go part ways, and that's what I did. And for about 6 months, I really did nothing, and then I got really bored. I was 57 years old, had just sold a company, and I knew I wasn't done. And so 3 years prior to selling the company, I was a member of Vistage. And so I was sitting around the table with my peers, and we were helping each other and working on each other's businesses, making good decisions and running better businesses. And that was helpful for me, at least to give me the support and the guidance and the confidence in my decisions that led up to a successful transaction and a liquidity event uh, for sale of the company.
Who was your chair, by the way?
Oh yeah, Rick Rogers.
I love Rick Rogers.
Yes, I love Rick Rogers. He's like a brother.
Great, fantastic guy. And so that support that you got, how do you think that things would have turned out? Without Vistage and without having the community selling a business, and not only selling the business, but then staying on after and being essentially just another employee at the company that you started.
Yeah.
How did what kind of help did Vistage give you through that?
Uh, that's a really good question, and it changed my life, and here's why. At the time that Rick Rogers found me, I was in a difficult place in leading the business. I had run into, mentally and physically, I'd run into a brick wall. And I was carrying a lot of stress. There was a lot of isolation. Even though I had a wonderful board of directors, there's still just this isolation that occurs with business leaders where how you don't understand until you've walked in the shoes before. And running into Vistage, joining Vistage, being with a group of my peers, and then combined with hiring a life coach, helped me through a very difficult period. And once I kind of saw the light at the end and I popped out the other end of the tunnel, that's when we started having year over year, 3 consecutive years of top line growth, year over year, consecutive years of profitability, and we all of a sudden we had developed something that was quite valuable. And 3 years prior to that, I thought I was done. And so, getting new perspective and support and empathetic accountability, these are all the things that I didn't think at the time I was able to get. Now, I'll have to say, in all of the challenges that I went through, there was one common denominator, and it was me. And
Yep.
once I learned how to change me and change my perspectives and outlooks and gratitude and that type of thing, everything else started improving.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And so how did you decide to come back to Vistage as a chair?
Yeah. So after the sale of the company, I stayed on. Um, and this is some advice for some of any member of Vistage. When you get to that point and you sell your company, I highly recommend staying on, because here's why. Oftentimes, you've never had to, you've had to learn how to manage up, you've had to learn
Yep.
how to manage down, but now you're in a new company working with peers who are also holding a similar position. and no one ever gave me the training on how to go manage across. Okay, so I think that was valuable to stay in the group to learn how to do that. And then also, oftentimes in a sale, there's a percentage of the valuation that might be held as an earnout.
Right.
And here you are, you're in the new company, you've got your new management team and your new partners, and you want to look out for what's the best thing for the overall business. But then what's tugging on you is, but what about that earnout?
Right.
And what about all my investors and key employees that are participating in that earnout? And sometimes it can be a conflict, and that's where it's also good. I felt for a year after sale, hanging out in the group, they were able to help me navigate through some of those difficult times.
And that's a really uh, number one, really interesting perspective, really refreshing perspective when you talk to folks who sell their businesses and whether willingly or unwillingly end up having to stay on. Um, what happens? A lot of people describe that as one of the most miserable experiences of their lives because it's not my company anymore. My baby is gone. They're running my baby into the ground, and I'm not appreciated the way that I think that I should be, and the day that either my that I met the requirements for the earnout, or the day that they let me go was like the best day.
Yeah, it's not too. I think it's fairly common. What I hear often is, "Hey, Steve, you had a 3-year employment agreement. You lasted a year. That's pretty good." And
There you
and
go.
so that's kind of typical. Steve, you were able to, what you sold to this new co is exactly what they got. How do you know that? Because even after I left, there was a period that the earnout needed to occur, and by golly, I had awesome people and awesome salespeople that stayed on and made it happen. And so that's really nice to be able to participate in something like that. But it's not. I mean, I was told the wisdom I was given was go do your deal for the number that's right with just the cash up front, because
Mm-hmm.
so often it's difficult to get that earnout.
Yeah. Very cool. And so you're now you worked in the business for a while, and now you're out. Let's go back there.
Okay, yeah. So I it was a very natural. The 6 months went by. I was wondering, okay, now what? And the chairing was a very natural thing for me, a progression. I knew it. I knew I was a member. I knew what it did for me as a member and as a CEO. And I also had a great chair in Rick Rogers, that it was sort of like I was in a meeting one day in the group meeting, and then I had the epiphany, and I'm watching him, and I go, that's what I want to do. It's just the light bulb went on, and then went and sat with him and said, "This is what I want to do, Rick." And he was like, "Steve, are you sure you want to do this? I mean, you're fairly young, and you could have another run at CEOing, and maybe that's your final sprint. Do one more." And I think I knew in my heart I was beyond that. And what I wanted to do really was I wanted to pay it forward. I was surrounded by great people, a great board of directors. We shared common values and work ethic and morals, and we stayed together for 19 years. I was like, that was kind of magical. Don't get me wrong, it was rough at times, but to be able to stay through for 19 years with your original investors, there's some magic there. And I wanted to be able to take the best lessons learned from that and pay it forward. And I wanted to also do the best I could to ensure that business owners and leaders and entrepreneurs maybe didn't make the same mistakes that I made. And if I could do that and have that kind of impact, um, that was going to be very fulfilling for me.
And you currently have two CE groups, chief executive groups.
Yeah.
What what do you love about your groups?
And love is a great word, because I love them. And I think what I love about them is the like mindedness that they have. And when I say like minded, um, they're growth oriented. They want to grow. They're life learners. Um, they place a high emphasis and value on development, not only for themselves but the people who are working around them. So there's that growth mindset. The other is they're pretty humble. The ones that thrive in these peer groups, there has to be a degree of humility because um, that's how it works. That's how the chemistry works. Is to say, hey, I don't need to be or prove that I am the smartest person in the room. Rather, I'm here to seek and understand um, where I might have blind spots, where I might be able to grow myself, and also, the humility to contribute and know that if I come up with an idea, it might be a bad idea, but at least I'm contributing. And like they say, 10% of everything that we say is 100% spot on. And so there's that, there's just that humility to know it doesn't, it's not all about being right. And then last is they're smart people. And when I say smart, um, it's more from an EQ perspective than it is from a book or being highly rational or highly logical. They're smart in that they know how to communicate with people. And I think that's kind of the magic of making it happen. And back to your original question, what it's like sitting around the table with a group of 12 to 14 CEOs in each of these groups. What does that day look like if you were a fly on the wall? That just gives you a little bit of a precursor.
Yeah, absolutely. We're starting to run low on time, but I wanted to ask you one final question before I wrap this up with you. You described uh, a few years prior to selling your business this feeling of I'm done. I've mentally had it. I've emotionally had it. I've physically had it. I don't know how to go on with this. That's a that's a feeling that a lot of entrepreneurs that's something that a lot of us get to. What advice would you give to somebody who is in that spot?
Yeah, I think probably the advice is there's so much value in being self aware. So just first of all to know that you're in that place. Then the second thing is to go ask for help. It's very common, and I don't know. We learn from a young age that it's a sign of weakness, maybe if we have to go ask for help. But I will tell you that there are so many good resources out there that want to help, that are fulfilled in helping. And so go and do that. Go surround yourself with people who care, and that would be the probably the big advice that I would have to give.
Steve, you've been a wonderful guest. Thank you so much for sharing your story with me. If folks want to get in touch, if they have questions about Vistage, about selling a company, if they need to know how to properly install a Formica countertop, what's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, well, I'll give you two ways to do that. One, email me steve.sager@vistagechair.com, and the other is my phone number. And I don't mind giving that out. It's 303-419-9800. Leave me a message there, and I will pick up and get back with you.
Well, thanks so much, Steve. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for being a great guest.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on, and all the best to you.
You got it.
Okay.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Chairwaves. You can subscribe to our feed using Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your platform of choice. You can also visit chairwaves.com for more information. Chairwaves is hosted and produced by me, Eric Wolf, and to connect with me, you can visit my website at ewolf.live. That's EWOLF.live. And a disclaimer, while I love Vistage and CEO peer groups, this podcast is not owned by or affiliated with Vistage or any other peer organization. Thanks for listening.